Baraka, thank you so much for sitting down and having a conversation with us today to talk about lead and lead service lines and lead and water. I just want to, have an honest conversation, resident to resident. So lots of conversations have been happening about how this started and when it started. Can you just give some clarification on how did we get to this point?
Well, actually, this began in Newark because of the school system identified lead in their water during tests that the schools did. As a result of that, after that problem was abated, the state mandated that we do more testing. So we began testing more often. In 2017 of July, we got our first exceedance level of lead in the water. We sampled over 100 samples in the city. Maybe a dozen or so came back with lead in it, or elevated levels of lead, I should say. Later on, we did other tests, and found out we had more, samples that had exceeded the guidelines for lead in the water. We put out, let me backtrack. In July, after we got the first exceedance level, we put out a press release to the press and to the place and to the world, and we sent mailers out through the water department to all of the folks in the city that use our water system that we had exceedance levels in about 12 or 13 places out of the samples that we took. We were mandated to do that, and we did it. We also had to research or find out why lead was getting into the water in those places as opposed to other places. So we did more testing, and we found out that there was a problem. It seemed like there was a problem with lead. So we immediately got a contractor, a firm, an engineering firm, to do a widespread study across the city to find out what's happening with the water, why is the lead leaching from the pipes into the water. That report came back to us in a draft copy in October, at the top of October of 2018. That immediately after that, we began the filter distribution program. We began distributing filters. We began doing all of the town halls, all of the Facebook Lives, all of the teletown halls to inform people and doing a widespread kind of filter distribution process. Before that, though, we engaged the state. When we first saw these exceedances, that we needed to change the lead service lines. We engaged them. We talked to them about changing the lead service lines. They helped us. This is when Chris Christie was the governor, actually. They agreed to it. The local finance board, the DCA, got on board with us. We were able to create a program where we will be able to replace some of the lead service lines in the city, if not all of the lead service lines in the city over a few period of years. But that's how we are at this point. I don't know how it got to a point where everybody is saying the Newark source water is bad. I think it's just a kind of, salacious story that people like to print and repeat.
So how are we, people are categorizing us as Flint. How is this different than Flint, Michigan?
I take offense to that. First of all, I live in the city of Newark. Like, I lived here my entire life. My mother lives here. My family lives here. My nieces and nephews are in this city. My children grew up in this community, drinking the water, being a part of the community. We still live here, so it's a serious problem for us. Newark is not anywhere near Flint at all. In Flint, they purposefully stopped using the corrosion control inhibitor in their water. They just stopped. They made a decision not to use the inhibitor. They were out of guidelines and out of the compliance with their DEP regulations, the EPA regulations. Newark has never been out of compliance in terms of our regulations or what it is that we were doing, our testing. We've never been out of compliance with our corrosion control inhibitor. We've been using it all along. The problem in Newark is that our corrosion control inhibitor stopped working. It ceased to work. There was no purposeful and deliberate reason to stop using a corrosion control inhibitor like they did in Flint. They did it very purposefully to save money for the city. That is exactly what they did. It's not what happened in the city of Newark at all. Ours stopped working because the pH balance in the water changed. After 20 years, we were the same effective chemical we've been using over a 20-year period, it stopped being effective. We even took a pipe and sent it to the EPA so they could look at the pipe, and they validated that our corrosion control inhibitor was not working. And so we began to identify a new corrosion control inhibitor to put in the water, the same one that we put in, that's being put in other people's water or our water in other people's cities, that is working. So that's completely different. We were always in compliance. In fact, we went above and beyond compliance. We gave out water filters. We are changing people's water, their lead service lines, not because we're being forced to, but because we decided that that's something we should do early on. Even before the draft report came out, we began working with the state to get the lead service lines changed.
So just to provide more clarity, because even my mom has been calling me, asking me, what is specifically as far as when did this start? And I think there's numerous news reports that are going out that saying this started in July and we didn't alert people. But in fact,
right.
We did have a press conference, did you not? Right,
that's completely false. We had a press conference right after, we sent out a press release right after that said exactly what was happening in the water. It was a release we sent out, and we communicated to the residents through the mail that what the exceedance levels was, and we had to do that on their water bill, their report. When they get it, we put the information right on there. Every time there's an exceedance level, any exceedance level in the water, anything that's an exceedance, the DEP requires us to send a notice to the residents. We send a notice right on their water bill of what the exceedance levels are and what's going on. Immediately, we send it around to the folks. In fact, the press knew because we sent them a press release about it, about the elevated levels of lead. They knew, and all the people that are ranting and raving knew. That's why NRDC is here, because we told them through our press release that we have this water issue, and they found their way to the city of Newark.
So we know that young children, pregnant moms, infants are more susceptible to lead poisoning. What is it that we're doing differently or more prudently to bring attention to those affected populations? So
we're working with the State Department of Health, and we're going to contact all the pediatricians. In fact, I was at UH yesterday. Contact all the pediatricians in the city who are treating our children, and let them know that they should proceed to test young babies and children for levels of lead in their blood. We have a robust testing program in the city of Newark that's free. We're going to be doing it. In the health department, we are notifying everybody that comes in for WIC, women, infant, and children, and all of our partners to do the same thing. I just spoke to the president at UH about them notifying residents that they're going to do free testing as well over at the hospital at UH. So we want to make sure that all of our kids are tested in the city. And I do want to say, even if kids come back with elevated lead in their blood, it doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily attributed to the water, right? So most of our kids get elevated levels of lead in their blood through lead-based paint and through the chips that come off the paint in their homes and the dust from that lead-based paint that's in their house. That's why we have a lead abatement program that's probably the biggest, it is the biggest one in the state of New Jersey, and we probably abate more homes than any place else in the state of New Jersey annually. We do that. We put people in transitional housing while we abate their homes. So the real problem is the lead that people are ingesting or inhaling, children in their homes.
So we know that Newark is the largest city in the state of New Jersey, and some people want to know why they're not affected and why others are affected. Right,
and I think that's important because, look, when this first happened, you had reporters coming all over to Newark. You had a reporter even come, on his own, testing, public water sites, testing the recreation centers, testing water out in the street. He found no lead, right? He found no lead. So what's clear, and NRDC knows this, Karen Yee knows this, all these people know it. Why? Because they keep repeating it. They're saying that there's nothing wrong with Newark's water source. And that's all we've been saying, that there's nothing wrong with Newark's water source, nothing. And the problem is that they're trying to create this hysteria, which I think is terrible, right? And that they're creating this hysteria, making people believe that anywhere they go in Newark that the water is going to be bad. They know that that's incorrect. That's incorrect information. It's false information. It's like yelling fire in a crowded movie theater. It's just absolutely bad and wrong. And straight out, it's a lie. So, Newark's water is serviced by two reservoirs. One, the Pequannock reservoir and the other one the Wanacue, right? So we use one corrosion control inhibitor in a Pequannock site, and this is the water reservoir where it began to lose its effectiveness. So that area covers the West Ward, parts of the South Ward, parts of the North Ward, right, and parts of the Central Ward. The Wanacue site, where the corrosion control inhibitor is working, services the East Ward, parts of the South Ward, parts of the North Ward, and parts of the Central Ward, and none of the West Ward. So when you hear people saying that only the East Ward is not affected, that's not true. So there's the East Ward, parts of the North, parts of the South, and parts of the Central that's not affected by this at all. Plus, any home that does not have any lead service lines or any lead pipes, they're not affected at all. Tall buildings that don't have these lead pipes, they're not affected at all, right? These big industrial sites or stadiums or the airport or all these places, they don't have lead service lines or lead pipes, so they're not affected. And that's the message that we've been trying to get out. It's the message we've been trying to get out, message we were getting out in 2017, right? In 2017, we were talking about this. We didn't just start talking about lead service lines because NRDC showed up. We were talking about it the minute we found that there was an exceedance level, we began talking about it, right? And we told people that the water source is fine. And that's a fact. When people say you downplaying that, that's wrong. It's just a fact. The fact is the water source is fine. The problem is folks have lead service lines, and the lead service lines have to be replaced, or we have to put an inhibitor in the water that prevents lead from leaching off the pipe into the water. That's factual. Not every household, not every business, not every building has lead service lines or lead pipes. So some people are not affected. In fact, most people in the city are not affected by this. Most people are not affected by this.
So can we talk a little bit about this idea of, I think on a normal day-to-day, we just drink water, right? And now that this has arisen, lots of conversations are going on about where does water come from, how do we treat water, who has lead service pipes, who doesn't.
That's good.
This whole education about what we're ingesting into our bodies leads to an environmental justice kind of conversation, right?
Sure.
And I think if you want to speak more towards that, I think that would talk about, lead paint and things of that. So
Yeah.
what that means for
Yeah.
urban communities in general.
Well, we live in these cities, mostly poor black and brown people live in these cities, and we are more susceptible to the environmental conditions that have been left in these cities. And levels of poverty, underdevelopment, neglect, infrastructure neglect, all of those things, lack of investment, has us in old homes, old buildings, old roadways, old pipes. And so we're affected by that. With industrial, a lot of the industry is, concentrated. So you have, the air is not good, So there's many things environmentally that we have to deal with. And we collectively try to make sure that we address them. That's why we have a sustainability officer in the city that we hired. That's why we try to come up with opportunities to address, the kind of environmental concerns that we have in this community. That's why, I take offense when people are trying to say we purposefully or deliberately try to hide stuff from people to say that they're, prevent them from knowing that there's lead in the water. That's the furthest thing from the truth. In fact, we're mandated by the DEP. And if we did not do that, the DEP would have said something. The EPA would have said something. We did it. We did it multiple times, right? The problem is that there are people who are looking to make an issue out of this or make a story for themselves where it is none. And for them to do that is just outright wrong to me.
So we talked a lot about, and thank you for giving clarity on how did we get here? What are the next steps moving forward?
Well, ultimately we're going to have to continue to give out these water filters. We're going to give people replacement cartridges for up to a year to the folks that need it. And the people who are anxious about it, they should continue to call, the water department. And I know it's getting kind of rough. You're not getting the quick response that you normally get because we're getting an overwhelming amount of calls. But we're going to get to you, and we're going to test your water. And you could see if there's something wrong with your water right to yourself. You don't have to listen to the Star Ledger, the New York Times, the NYC, the radio. You don't even have to listen to the mayor, right? You can get your water tested, and they could tell you if there's lead in the water. If there's lead in the water, we'll give you a filter, right? If there's not lead in the water, then you're okay. And as we go forward, we're still engaging the state of New Jersey, the local finance board, to talk to them about helping us replace these lead service lines that they've agreed to do. We want to make sure that they hold on to this agreement and that the residents of the city know that we're fighting for them in this capacity. And then they should help us raise our voice a little louder to make sure that the state keeps its word and that we get these lead service lines replaced in the city of Newark. We're doing this, something we came up with. We weren't forced to by the DEP or the EPA or any community group. The city on its own did this.
So numerous residents are saying that they are not eligible for a water filter. Why is that the case?
Well, first of all, we only have a finite amount of water filters. We have a small amount, 40,000. There are almost 300,000 residents in the town and homes, and everybody does not have a lead service line. Everybody does not have lead piping. Everybody does not have lead solder. And that's why it's important for us to get the message out the right way. And that's why we're pushing back against the messaging that came out on that NRDC is pushing out, that came out on the radio, that the New York Times is pushing out. It's just wrong information. I mean, there are residents in the city of Newark. In fact, most of the residents in the city of Newark are drinking water that have never had any lead in it, right? Has not have no exceeding levels, so we don't need to give you a filter because you don't need it. And there are people who need filters, particularly people who are in affected areas, who have lead service lines, who have young children in their house, or women that are pregnant that are nursing, or senior citizens. We need to make sure they get these filters first, and we need to distribute it to as many people as need them as we can. And if you want a filter, you should get your water tested. And if the test comes back positive, we'll give you a filter. So you're not eligible for a filter. We have to prove that there's lead in your water before you get a filter. And that's basically what it is. And you can't listen to these folks who, in my mind, have a alternative agenda. Some of these people should just, go to court with NRDC and, fill out an amicus brief and be a part of that. At the end of the day, the city of Newark has done everything in its power to make sure we deal with and abate this issue in the city.
While distribution has been going on for 3 weeks, there may be still people that don't know if they're affected or not. How do they find out if they're affected, and how do they pick up a filter in the event that they are affected? So
the most immediate way in my mind is to, call the water department at 973-733-6303. So if they call the water department, they could let them know if they're affected, if they're not sure if they're affected, to come out and get their water tested. Or they can go online to NewarkLeadServiceLine.com, NewarkLeadServiceLine.com, and you can find out. It has your address listed. And if your address is listed, call the water department, go get you a filter, or go to any of the rec sites. You can go to St. Peter's if you live in the South Ward. If you live in the West, you can go to Boylan, right? If you live in the North Ward, you can go to Rotunda, or in the Central Ward, you can go to JFK. Or you can go to the water department itself on Central Avenue, or the health department on William Street, right? There's options all over the city where you can go up to 8 p.m. and in some places 10 p.m. to go get a water filter. So they're available. Many people have gotten them. And not only that, we're going door to door still giving out water filters as well.
How complicated is it to install the water filter? Or if someone needed more help, how can they get more help?
Well, as Kareem would say, you should open up the box. There's a whole lot of directions in there. You should read those directions. There are replacement caps or caps on there to help you fit the water filter onto your faucet, right? If you have a newer faucet that snakes out, you have to get a water pitcher and not a water filter. But you should call the water department and they'll be able to explain a lot of that stuff to you. But I would say read the instructions. And the filter should last you about 3 months. After the filter has lost its effectiveness, we'll give you a replacement cartridge that you can use, and it'll help the filter last for another 3 months. And we're going to continue to do that for up to a year so that you can be okay while we put the correct corrosion control inhibitor in the water and this thing gets past us, right? But the thing that's not going to get past us is the fact, 2 things, that we have to change these lead service lines, and we're going to need people to be vigilant with the city to help us get the lead service lines changed. And we have to address the lead paint in people's homes, which has been an issue for a very, very long time. And the city is constantly abating those issues, right? And I just want people to know we're not doing this by ourselves, right? So the city is in this with the DEP. We have regulatory agencies that monitor us, that tell us what to do. We have never been out of compliance with them, Never. We have never, not once, been told that we're doing something that we were not supposed to do by those regulatory agencies. When we have an exceedance level, they give us an action plan. We abide by the action plan, and we've done exactly what we were supposed to do on all of those items on there. And in fact, not only have we done what they asked us to do, we've done more than what they've asked us to do on those items. So, I mean, we absolutely have nothing to hide. And I'm willing to talk to anybody about any of these situations instead of having like these kind of radio shows and talk shows where everybody is invited to talk. But me, I would say invite me on there and ask me the questions yourself. If you think we're hiding something, ask us some hard questions and let us respond to them the way we think they need to be responded to. And what you'll find out is that, you know, what people are trying to say about Newark is not true. Newark is not Flint.
Will there be any more community meetings so residents can talk to you directly?
Yeah, there's one coming up on Thursday, and I know we're gonna probably have more tele-town hall meetings as well in the city. So I would say stay tuned. Look at the city's website. Go to our Facebook page, our Twitter page. All of that stuff will be there, and engage. Be involved in what's happening. I know a lot of people look at other alternative sites and all these other kind of things. I would say stay engaged to your city. If you live in Newark, you should be engaged with Newark. Look at Newark's website. Look at the city's website. Look at the Twitter website. Go to my own personal Instagram account. Find out what's going on in the city of Newark and engage us. Talk to us. Ask us the hard questions. Find out what's happening in your town. And don't take the word of folks who don't even live here.
Thank you, Mayor Baraka.
You're welcome.